Welcome to Drinks Coach number 79. The next few Drinks Coaches are kind of fortuitous, really, because at this time of year, because we don't have winter press tastings, etc., etc., wine writers, journalists, presenters, influencers, etc., are invited onto lots of Zoom chats, onto webinars where we can interact with the winemaker about his wines, and they send the wines out to us. This is the new normal, and frankly, I don't want it to change. Even I've been giving talks to people around the country, if not in Europe, in fact, where they send the wines out and I taste with them virtually on screen. And I think the people that receive my bants and taste these wines along with me and learn a little bit about them are much happier doing it on their laptop at home, where they don't have to pay for a babysitter because the kids are upstairs, where the dog isn't tearing things apart. And of course, they don't have to get a £50 Uber back from Shoreditch in the middle of the night. So I think we've discovered that with technology comes some really positive things. And really, I'm just very, very happy about that. I don't have to now drive to Newcastle necessarily and do a wine tasting with someone and stay over. I can now do it by post, basically. So why am I mentioning that? Well, I'm mentioning that because we've got some wines here for the initiated, for the expert sommeliers and people out there watching this channel that are friends of mine that have been in the business for a while. You will recognise these gorgeous labels, these iconic labels. Those people who are hopefully learning a few things from me. I hope I don't scare you off with too much jargon most of the time. These wines come from a wonderful estate called Pyramid Valley in North Canterbury, New Zealand. Cool area. And why do I have these bottles? Well, as I mentioned before, these bottles were sent to one of the best wine journalists in this country, and the fantastic wine writer, just got a great way with words, and writes very good character pieces, always very good at describing people, is my friend Victoria Moore from the Daily Telegraph. She calls me up, saying that she's got her daughter, my goddaughter in fact, Francesca, at home with her, and she's like, I can't drink these wines, and they're very valuable wines. I'll leave them outside, you can come and collect them. So thank you, Victoria. Em and I have loved drinking these wines. Most of these are nearly empty, but they're very special and very different, iconic in fact. And I don't think I've tried wines from this particular estate for up to more than a decade, in fact. I remember when they first started, but they have achieved godly status amongst many, and some of these wines are not for the faint-hearted. You'd have to pay £150 plus in a restaurant if you were drinking these. So without further ado, why am I doing this? Well, I think it's because Victoria was generous enough to send them to me. I think that it's only fair to pass the love on. Thank you, Kate Sweet at Louis Latour Agencies. Thank you very much for making both our week, because these wines are really unusual, but phenomenal as well. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to riff on a few things. You know, this is always a stream of consciousness, pretty much. So let's start off with trying the first wine in this lineup. We've got 3 whites and 2 reds. This is called Pyramid Valley, New Zealand, North Canterbury, Sauvignon Blanc, 2019. North Canterbury, Sauvignon Blanc. Oh, shit, there we go, 19. Right, so Sauvignon Blanc. So what? New Zealand Sauvignon. What's new? It's New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, Jim, but not as we know it. These wines are biodynamic. I think I've mentioned this before. Biodynamic is like it's organic with very big bells on. A guy called Rudolf Steiner, back I think in 1947, I've got a date wrong, set up a commune where he was trying to revitalise the soil, allow sort of like land that had been cultivated and farmed to come back to its natural meadow state, energise the plants, allowing vegetables, carrots, potatoes, whatever, to taste 10 times better because they were fully healthy plants. And this concept, this process, and it's almost a mantra, it's almost a religion of sorts agriculturally, has been adopted by people all over the world because they see magical improvements in the wine, or they prefer to drink wines that are made biodynamically than wines which are made with cultivated yeast, a little bit of sulphur here, a little bit of inoculation there, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. No, these wines kind of pretty much make themselves, and as a result they have maybe sometimes some flaws, but they have infinite complexity and texture compared to normal wines because they're being made and fermented by thousands of different kinds of yeasts rather than one. So it's like the largest orchestra in the world rather than one person with a piccolo in the background. Yeah, I don't really overdo that in this particular show. It would have been an opportunity to talk about biodynamism completely, but I think it would be nice if I'm able to demonstrate what it can do. Here, these were great wines anyway, which brings us to the people that founded this winery, I think about 24 or 5 years ago. Mike and Claire Virching. Is it Wiesing? Sadly, Mike, who and his wife, who had been making incredible wines at this estate for 2 decades, he passed away recently. But the estate is under different hands now. Brian Sheth, and who's also, I believe, is American, and one of the great characters and one of the great authorities in the wine industry, full stop, I think the Americans say period, is Steve Smith, Master of Wine. Steve Smith is somebody I've been fortunate enough to spend some really fun days with and a few very good lunches and the odd dinner. Drove pretty much the whole length of New Zealand with him, going down to an aromatics conference down the South Island. And Steve is an extraordinary man. He was the head winemaker, conceptor of one of the great wineries in the North Island called Craggy Range. You may well have come across the wines, and they make extraordinary wines at all levels. Very, very, very fine wines in pretty much all the regions in New Zealand that are famous. Certainly Marlborough, Martinborough, Central Otago, and he was basically brought in to try and make the best wines possible in the world. And they would regularly sit down with his winemaker, was it Doug Easthope, if I remember? And they'd sit down and regularly blind taste first growth Bordeaux, which is £1,500 a bottle, right? Like Lafite and Latour, or Pomerols and Saint-Emilion Grand Crus, alongside their own wines, and go, why isn't this as good? Or, blimey, we were actually getting somewhere. And I think he makes some of the best Bordeaux blends in the world. He moved on. He decided to become Chancellor, to pass on his enormous polymathic knowledge. He became the Chancellor at the is it the University of Lincoln, I think, or Lincoln University, which is the great agricultural university in Canterbury, Christchurch. I don't know. I have friends who have actually been there, but it's the great winemaking university of New Zealand. He was Chancellor for 3 years, and then was approached by Brian, who said, I have a large sum of monies, and I want to buy an estate. I want to make it and manage it biodynamically, and I want to make some of the most exciting Pinot Noir and Chardonnay known to man. Now, that's not an uncommon thing to ask, because New Zealand, first of all, is well known for growing those two varieties, which are the great varieties of Burgundy. And people often, if not almost always, in this industry, have a Damascene moment, a moment of epiphany, where they drink a Pinot Noir and they go, that's what Pinot Noir is all about. That's why people pay literally thousands of pounds for a single bottle of Burgundy that's very rare, where they make only a barrel or two. I get it now. And then you spend the rest of your life chasing that moment, that kind of first time that you really got submerged and overwhelmed by what really great Chardonnay or white Burgundy initially can do, or more importantly, I think Pinot Noir, more red Burgundy. And sometimes you never find that again. And because the first time you're astonished like that, it's a bit like going to the Fat Duck for dinner. It's so different that it changes all your terms of reference to what food really is. And the first time you go, it's a very natural, very unstuffy experience at the Fat Duck. Costs a few bob. But it blows your mind. It blows your tiny Swede, and it makes you want to cook for the next 2 or 3 years, constantly going, how did you do this? How did you do that? Oh, amazing that you got this to do that. But you go back again, you go back to Fat Duck, and you can relive that experience. But it's like watching Star Wars on VHS or on DVD. You know what's coming. So it's never like the first time. This producer, now Brian and Steve, is capable of giving those experiences to people. And these wines are very much, in terms of individuality, complexity, harmony, length, concentration, perfume, are up there in that tiny little 1% echelon of the greatest wines in the world. You either like them or loathe them, but if you're an expert, you can appreciate them even if they're not the wines you drink, nonetheless. So, back to Sauvignon Blanc. North Canterbury, we'll talk about the climate soon, but there is an issue with global warming, and all the areas in the world which are producing particularly good Chardonnay or particularly good Sauvignon Blanc right now, people have just accepted the fact that they just have to replant with red grape varieties, because sooner or later those vineyards are going to be too warm to make white wine, eventually. So here we've got a wine which is a Sauvignon Blanc, biodynamically produced, so therefore it's been fermented spontaneously, which means they pretty much just open the vat, let lateral wild yeast come in and start to ferment the sugars and into all sorts of different things, not just alcohol, but other different aldehydes and textures and amino acids. So basically you just allow birds to come in and spiders to come in, just basically crap in the tank, and then that's how the wine starts. A bit like lambic beer in Belgium. Now some of these wines, especially from areas which are afflicted with industry or overcropping and over-industrialisation or over-agriculturalisation, whatever you call it, agriculture on an intensive scale, you find that the actual yeast, the natural sort of stuff in the air is knocked about a bit, and it's not very easy then to make a wine spontaneously because you don't get a balance of flavours. In fact, you get some very off flavours. There's things called killer yeasts, which may be unpleasant, that take away from the general kind of sort of like garden basket of yeasts that you want to make your wine into your grape juice into wine. So this wine doesn't have that instant when you pick it up and smell it. It doesn't just go New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. It tastes like, without any doubt, really world class. I mean, top end French Sauvignon Blanc, like top producer of Parfumé. I mean, Pichard de Tracy, Athos Melot, maybe Lucien Crochet, who makes wines like in this style. It's very, very similar to those. And the nose is a little bit more complex, a bit more invasive. You know, you think, oh, is it Sauvignon Blanc? Yeah, probably. Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe it's Semillon or Chenin. It's got many more faces to the gem. It's not just obviously what it is. And when you taste it, wow. Look, this wine has had absolutely no additives or preservatives put in it at all. I don't know if we can see if I shake the bottle, but it's just down to here. And there's a punt. That's been in my fridge for 4 days. The wine still tastes incredible. I'm not sure how that can happen, really. But this is a wine with no additives, no sulphur, no preservatives. And if anything, this tastes better than it did when I tasted it, having picked it up from Victoria's front door. So what does it smell like? It smells of wine of place. It smells of the same things you expect fine Sauvignon Blanc based wines to smell of, whether they're from Bordeaux or from the Loire or of course New Zealand or any other part of the New World. It smells of hedgerows. There's a stony quality. There's a smell of kind of that I associate with wines grown on limestone. There's maybe just in the corners somewhere, slightly, almost like a slight off-ode, and you go, oh, it's almost like seeing a mouse run across the floor. And you go, was that a mouse? But then it's gone, and that's the rough with the smooth that you get with biodynamic wines. What you get also is texture. This is Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is the samurai sword of grape varieties. Viognier Chardonnay, big, round, cuddly, warm background, kind of just soft edges in most cases. And Sauvignon Blanc is like Riesling's. It's Kill Bill. This wine is like drinking a cushion. It's so soft and fluffy, and then the minerality kicks in. It's just a fascinating, delicious, beguiling, I think very gastronomic Sauvignon Blanc, which at I think a retail of about £17, which I used to think was quite expensive, is a giveaway, is giving a wine of that quality away. And when I tasted this the other day, I thought, holy shit, if that's what they can do with Sauvignon Blanc, what are the Chardonnay and Pinot Noirs like? Nice segue there, onto the next wine. So, we have two Chardonnays here. First Chardonnay, $24.99. So we're already, I think, for the people viewing this channel, in that kind of, maybe on Christmas Day. But things are getting more expensive. But there's some of you out there who will know what amazing value that is. Because the other single vineyard Chardonnay, 59.99. Yes, you heard it here, 60 quid. So this is the same price as Premier Cru White Burgundy. White Burgundy is getting so fastly, so expensive, and it's going up so quickly that it's almost actually the price of basically what we call Village Meursault, which was £17 5 years ago. Now it's 30, 40 plus. So 60 quid sounds expensive, but again, we're talking about a site that they poured over, and Steve Smith and Brian looked at the top 5 estates in New Zealand, and they chose the top 5 and analysed them, and then went to the one they wanted to buy and made an offer they couldn't refuse. And this estate is some of the finest terroir, finest chosen soils yet found for making these particular grape varieties. How do we know that? Because you can taste it. You taste this wine, you go, oh, wow. Okay, it's New Zealand, but where is it from in New Zealand? Because I don't know this one. North Canterbury. There's not a lot of guys down there. Okay, so this wine is Field of Fire, Pyramid Valley. Wheat brown. What does Biodynamic Chardonnay smell like? The wine's clearly been put in very, very expensive oak barrels to ferment. It smells like there has been some judicial batonnage. There may not have been, but batonnage is stirring up the lees, which allows a more yeasty, almost sourdough note on the nose, and increases the texture enormously, especially in high acid wines that you get from New Zealand in the cooler areas. It smells, there's a thing called, which I describe as burnt match sulphide. We're getting quite anal here, I'm afraid. They're anal wines. They're real kind of train spotter wines. Burnt match sulphides. The anhydride of sulphur smells like just lighting a red Swan Vesta. That smell, it's unmistakable, especially when you put it out and you smell the wood that's left behind. That charred wood that's left behind is the smell of some toasty flavours you get in wine, and it's a combination of the wine being barrel fermented in a charred barrel, but also the stirring and everything else, and the actual flavour of the Chardonnay itself produces this gorgeous, it's like slightly overcooked poilâne bread, poilâne toast, like expensive dark toast, which is bloody lovely. I mean, who doesn't like that smell? When you wake up in the morning and somebody's gone into the kitchen and they've made toast, and you can smell that, along with grilled bacon as a meat eater. There's very few smells in the world that are more important than that. So, how are we doing for time? We're at about 18 minutes, so not too much longer. It's incisive. When it hits the palate, you've got this immediate slake of acidity, like someone squeezed lemon juice into your mouth. Then it acquiesces, it sighs like a cheese, sort of fills out sideways to the sides of the palate. It's only then that you see all the different complex flavours inside. White chocolate, ocean melon, stone fruit, maybe white peach. I'm starting to sound like that lovely lady on telly, aren't I? Jilly, she's lovely. Shout out to you, Mrs. Goulden. Wow! There's so much flavour in every mouthful. You could nurse a glass. Remember, it's 25 quid, so it's about £5 a glass. You could nurse a glass for half an hour and just enjoy it, watch it change. Again, no preservatives, no additives. There's virtually half a glass left in the bottle. I've just poured it and it tastes exactly like it did when I first opened it. So maybe there's something to this biodynamic lark. Hey, so that's second wine. Now we're going to go to Lion's Tooth. Sold on Master of Malt website for $59.99. The colour, not being unkind, it's kind of the colour of healthy urine, I think. Golden without being oxidised, without being burnished. It's not copper gold, it's gold, white gold. Now, unsurprisingly, these wines were both from 2018, I imagine. Yeah. This wine is less evolved. This wine smells more tight, more intense. has again those burnt mac sulfides, those toasty notes, which are signs of reduction in the wine, which means the wine needs more time, more air, more affinage, more conditioning before it gets to its perfect peak. But those characteristics in of themselves are very attractive if you like them. I want to brie with that. You can almost smell a perfect brie de meaux in the background. There's a dairy quality to it, and the flush of the rind, the bloom of a cheese. I know it doesn't sound that appealing, but it's like that. But then this beautiful smell of lemon oil and stuff. Quince, maybe. Okay, let's try this. Woo-ah! Super intense. There's so much minerality there. It's almost like my tongue's in a vice. It's just piercingly intense, and the flavours just getting. It's actually still tasting stronger and stronger. It's like chili when you put your food in your mouth. It doesn't start like that. It grows until it becomes unbearable. That wine, I think, would probably be tasting at its peak in 10 or possibly more years' time. There's so much energy. If you're a Star Wars watcher, it's got so many midi-chlorians in its blood. It's Jedi wine. This is Jedi wine. Absolutely amazing. I don't often show you wines like this, and I don't try to gloat, but that's what £60 wine can do to a person like me. It's exciting. It's almost an emotional experience. Right. Moving on. This glass I've just used. It looks dirty on the camera, but it's got my fingerprints all over it. Joe, the greasy wine man. People used to call me the man that makes light switches greasy, because I love cooking, but I very rarely remember to wipe my hands. Okay, so we've got two here. We've got two different vineyards. Again, Pyramid Valley Winery, North Canterbury, and North Canterbury again. Single vineyards, very different expressions. And this shows you that within a rock's throwing distance, one vineyard and another, you know, why do people spend money on that Chablis but not the Chablis next door? It's amazing what difference a 10-metre walk makes in wine. Different soil structures, different aspects, maybe more sun in the morning, less sun at night, vice versa. Look at the colour. It's hard to describe. It looks, dilute's not the word, it looks limpid, it's almost watery looking, it's got lots of colour in there. There's sort of like almost a chestnut rim. I don't know whether that's because the wine's made biodynamically and made in a more oxidative way. It looks like the wine is slightly older than some. Can't believe that. That wine's been open with the screw cap off for 3 days. And I can't honestly say it tastes any worse than it did when I opened it. It smells of flowers. There's a very strong vegetation note. If you can understand this, it's like if you like the smell of fresh sautéed cabbage, or if you like sprouts and things like that, it's attractive in that way. It's vivid and vegetal. I think the French would describe this as sous-bois, which means undergrowth, the dead leaves in autumn on the ground that give you that slightly almost smoky, earthy, dark but warm smell of detritus and decaying leaves from summer. I do sound like I'm wanking on, but trust me, you're not here. It's in there, I tell you. So, right. What's Pinot Noir supposed to do? Well, I think great Pinot Noir, and the reason why people pay telephone numbers for the privilege, why Pinot Noir is so famous, is because it's not about it's like Shiraz. The best Shiraz is a Shiraz that's the more expensive Shiraz means the more concentrated Shiraz, which means the oakier Shiraz, the more structured Shiraz, the one that'll age longer. Pinot Noir isn't measured by the same terms as other red wines, and I honestly don't know why, but it just isn't. The only thing I think that comes close to that is good Syrah, that you can experience a similar sort of poetic gustatory experience. It's like it's first of all, it has to be like a duvet in the mouth. You're looking for fluffy texture and a nebulous cloud of flavour, almost like a gas, almost like it's leaking out your lips. There's no edges. You don't hit a wall of tannin. It's kind of It's like one of those rain showers with warm, big droplets of rain. Nothing has any edges. It's just completely amorphous and nebulous and fluffy and cloud-like. But then when it goes in the mouth, you have this build of intensity, and it's gentle. It seduces you. It kind of makes you relax, and then you're hammered, rather than just punching the face with a big plank, which is what a gin and tonic does. It's a much more elegant way to get wasted, to be honest. And this wine has all of those things, and it's fluffy. Two people in my life changed my opinion about Pinot Noir. One guy was a guy called Peter Finlayson, who owns a winery called Bouchard Finlayson in the Hemel and Ardor Valley, which means Heaven and Earth Valley, about two and a half hours drive out of Cape Town, down on the coast where the whales come every year. He said he made this very special wine once called Tête de Cuvée. When I was a wine buyer at Waitrose, we were the first people to buy it. And it was the first attempt to make a very expensive Pinot Noir in South Africa. He gave, at Christmas, a bottle of this to his pastor and said, "I'd like you to try this on Christmas Day. Please have this on Christmas Day with my blessing." He said, "Thank you, son. I'll taste it, and I'll let you know what it tastes like in the new year." So Peter then goes to church, first year of the new year, and the guy delivers the sermon, and he goes and says, "Pastor, did you try the wine?" He said, "Yes, I did, son." He said, "Well, what did you think?" And he said, "It was like the good Lord slipping down your throat in velvet pants." If you can think of a better wine tasting note for Pinot Noir than that, text it to me. Okay, that's number one. The other guy, Kevin Grant, bless you, Kevin. Ataraxia Wines, also in Hemel and Ardor. There's a theme here, isn't there? There are very few places where you can grow really great Pinot Noir in South Africa, and Hermanus and Hemel and Ardor is definitely one of them. And Kevin Grant, who owns a winery called Ataraxia, he was head winemaker in the vineyard opposite Bouchard Finlayson, which is the most famous Pinot Noir producer, Hamilton Russell, one of the great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay producers in the New World. Kevin Grant, when I asked him on live television, why does Pinot Noir excite people so much? Why is it so special? And he said these words: "Pinot Noir is like an orgasm." And I was like, "Go on," while we were interviewing him. Well, he said, because when you ask people, like Joburg bankers, whether they'll invest in your business, they go, "No." So why not? So because you make Pinot Noir and I don't like Pinot Noir. And then you ask them, have you had a really good Pinot Noir? Going back to my reference point to the Damascene moments and everything. And they'll go, "I think so. I think I've had good Pinot Noir." If you say, "I think I've had a good Pinot Noir," you definitely haven't had one. Like an orgasm, which I thought was very, very funny. Okay, there you go. Have you had an orgasm? I think so. Last wine. Angel Flower, on to this one. Earth Smoke. Same wine, different day. Different sides of the same coin. This wine has a deep chocolatiness to it. It tastes much more kind of aggressive. There's a bit more testosterone in this wine. It has a chalky edge. It's more minerally. It reminds me of the wines from a producer in Corton called Chardonnay, where one wine is very much like this. The other wine is suave and silky and beautiful. And I know it's completely out of date and it's very, very unwoke. But Burgundy, more than anything else, was always described as either feminine or masculine, which I totally understand is completely inappropriate. What we should be saying is it's either soft, forgiving and caring and soft and gentle and round, or it kind of takes the fight to you and there's a little bit of aggression. So this isn't woke either, but a bit more Glaswegian kind of thing. So there we go. Maybe we should describe Burgundies as either a Glaswegian or Edinburgh or something like that. I've just probably lost about 20 viewers. Okay, well, there you have it. This is Pyramid Valley. I have emoted for nearly half an hour about how wonderful this estate is. God bless Mike. I hope he's resting in peace. Started one of the great wineries of the world. Thank you to Kate Sweet. Thank you to Victoria Moore. Thank you to Louis Latour Agencies. See you next time.